So, if we conclude in terms of what are the affordances of the book of the future, I think we can see first of all that it's going to change the way in which we read. Reading is going to become much more contextualised, more localised, more suited to the environment you're in. Therefore it becomes more customised, more personal. So rather than having to read the single story, you may have a story with multiple trajectories or endings. Reading is probably going to become more social, very social opportunities in terms of apps. And the boundaries between what is a reader and an author are going to become permeable. It's no longer quite as clear-cut as to who the author is, who the reader is. And in that sense, the book becomes unbounded. It's no longer just a single vehicle. It's really a frame. So, if we think of that in terms of an editorial continuum, in a traditional print book continuum, you've got something like this. The author comes in, and a lot of the work in terms of producing that book is undertaken by the author. The publisher then comes in to turn the author's idea and conception into a final product. And it's only after publication that the reader comes in. That's what we might call the traditional print-based editorial continuum. If we go back to the medieval codex, the medieval book we talked about earlier, it looks like this. The author came in at the start, just as the author does today, but for a much shorter period of time. Then we had the reader. And interestingly enough, publication then happened almost immediately, although of course in those days publication would have been by hand, people copying the book, which meant a scribe was involved. And as we saw earlier, the reader could often annotate on top of what the scribe had originally written, and then when it was next published, so this is the second iteration, all those annotations, the marginalia in the notes section, would be incorporated into the next version. So in a sense, the reader, by annotating the original script, became an author as well. And so publication becomes very much more iterative in this medieval process. So the question really is, where do we want to see the editorial continuum shifting in terms of the book of the future? And that's a question I'm going to leave you with, because I think that's one of the key questions we need to be thinking about in terms of, do we want to maintain the current continuum, which is heavily in favour of the author, the single author, or do we want to move to the notion that the reader and the author combine synergistically, if you like, to become authors and readers? And that's possible with ebooks, but it's not something that we've really explored very fully. These are some final thoughts and implications for the type of learning that ebooks might encourage. So we can see here far more learning by doing, learning by more talk, learning by more inquiry. And if we think in terms of these different continua, I think we can see clearly that we're going to go from more personal to more collaborative types of reading experiences, from more static to more dynamic, rather than... So, that's the end of the presentation. If you have any queries or questions, there is an interactive widget that we've created to collect those on this page, and I'd be delighted as the presenter to reply to those. I'll do my very best to get back to, and to incorporate your ideas and thoughts into the next version of our interactive ebook. These are my contact details.